Welcome, everyone. You're listening to Ruffled Feathers right here at Two Birds on a Bat, coming to you from the Patio Studios. Patio is the original party place for St. Louis Cardinals fans everywhere. Since 1998, pre- or post-game, Patios is a place to be. This show is brought to you by Patterson Tire and Service, a whole lot more than a tire store. So we have a handful of spring training games under our belt. Some of us are freaking out. Some of us are staying pretty level-headed about it. Some of us just don't care because it's spring training. And at the end of the day, none of these games really count. But we do get to see how some of these players have come to camp prepared or not, hot out of the gate or not. We'll get into all that. But tonight's it's a very unique show tonight because sometimes just talking about your team is exciting enough. I kind of like that baseball voyeurism where I kind of like to look in on what some of these other fan bases are talking about, especially those in the National League Central and especially our division rivals, the Chicago Cubs. Those of you that know me know that I do another podcast called the Team of Rivals podcast. Two of my very good friends are Cubs fans. Unfortunately, that's one of their crutches, but they are Cubs fans. We get together every Thursday night and do this thing called Team of Rivals podcast. They are joining me tonight because we're into spring training now. The season's fast approaching. And I want to get their view on what they've seen from their team out there in Arizona. Because many of us Cardinals fans aren't focused on that. Our teams are all playing in Florida. So that's the only team competition we get to see is very limited this year and more so than usual. So without further delay, I want to welcome in my co-host for the Team of Rivals podcast, starting with Pete. And yes, he's a Cubs fan and he's up there in Chicago. Pete, take us away.
Good evening, Cubs and Cardinals fans. It's Thursday, March 4th. And this is also the Team of Rivals podcast, proud members of the Gateway City Sports Network. And I got to tell you, Ron, the original plan was that we were going to excise these, but I think that they fit together so well that I'm not going to do that. I do have to say, though, the voyeurism is actually on your side. This started first, then you went to Ruffled Feathers. So technically,
you're right.
This is the Team of Rivals podcast, and we just happen to be sharing it with Ruffled Feathers because Thursday night is our night. And I would hate to think that you're spoiling our special relationship.
I know.
Anyway, you can follow us online at teamofrivalspodcast.com. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Team of Rivals Podcast, and we're on Twitter at Team of Rivals Pod. And for those of you who are watching us live, hit the like and subscribe buttons and be sure to ring that bell on YouTube so that you receive notifications anytime we post new content. This is our first new show in 3 weeks, and some of you may have forgotten all the faces. I don't think they've seen all three of us together in I don't know, since the new year, maybe. But joining me for tonight's show, permanent occasional guest host, Elliott Dewey. And you've already had him introduced, but it's always good to bring him back in. Number 48 in the 2020 edition of the Top Cards on Twitter, Ron Nuttall. Boys, It's good to be back.
It is. We've been missing you for a few weeks. You know, we had Elle fill in for you 1 week, which is always a ratings boost versus when you're on. My brother joined up one night. It was an interesting conversation seeing the transformation that of course, Elle's has been a journey. It's been a long road. It's well documented. We're all familiar with that one. My brother went on his own personal one over this last year and, made a lifestyle change, and he looks completely different than he did a year ago. I didn't realize until I saw a side-by-side picture how much he had actually transformed. So, kudos to him. He's a completely different guy now.
Yeah, he did. When I saw that picture, he had done a lot of work, and it seems like all of that's paying off. But it was great to hear him talk a little sports ball.
He didn't.
No, not at all.
He didn't.
He avoided it like the plague.
Was he busy scrolling through his phone?
Yes, we caught him at least once. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, that's true. And Pete, so everybody can kind of hear your voice tonight. They're not gonna be able to see your camera. They've got Elliott and me. Just on visual. And I think it's because we had to do the log out, log in thing. So right now, just Elliott and I are visible on screen. No big deal. Or I can just put our logo up.
Probably better that way.
No. Our own fans on the Team of Rivals side of this thing haven't got to see your mug for almost a month now. So I'm disappointed.
We all know Pete's the beautiful one. So that's,
sure.
This is true. This is true.
He's looking better these days, though. He's got a little bit more of a sparkle in his eye. He's got, something happening in his life. We're not going to get into. We're not going to share anything here. But he's a happy guy, and we're happy for him. So, Pete, we've got some business to take care of as far as just, hey, look, we get to see some actual baseball, some things happening now. It's always fun. As little interested in actually in the outcome of most of these games and what happens. It is always Great to hear the familiar sounds, the familiar voices. You guys got a brand new voice this year. As far as on your TV side, that might sound a little bit different, right? So we'll get into that in a second. But before that, I just want to remind everybody on here, at least on the side that follows me on Two Birds on a Bat and Ruffled Feathers, you can find us at twobirdsOnAbat.com. Please click subscribe to that podcast. It takes only about 30 seconds to do so, and best of all, it's absolutely free. Find us on Twitter at Birds on a Bat Show. Follow us on Facebook. Just search for Two Birds on a Bat. Make sure you like that page and share it with a Mariners fan. Those guys are lonely these days. Let's share it with a Mariners fan this week. We're kind of going around here. On Instagram, you can find us at Two Birds on a Bat Show. You can also find us on lineupmediagroup.fm, home of Yo Radio, the newest streaming platform for your mobile device. Download it for free today. Spring training. Cactus.
Spring training.
Grapefruit.
I tell you what, boys, what's been exciting for me was turning on the game ESPN feed the other day, not watching the game, but hearing actual fans. There weren't a lot of them, but just having that background noise of fans reacting to a baseball game rather than piped in sound. I hope that they leave that as we get into the season. You know, they're talking about starting the season with 30% capacity, I think it is.
Yeah.
I hope that we get to hear 30% crowd noise that's genuine rather than somebody who's sitting in the stadium trying to figure out what the right crowd sound is to fit it so that the stadium sounds full. I'd much rather have a 30% capacity.
I'm with you. Go ahead, Elliott. I agree.
Well, you would think, though, after last year, that even though that sometimes it can be annoying, they'll have a little bit more of the microphones down in the stadium to catch a little bit more of that crowd noise so that it feels a little bit more natural for the viewer at home. Because that's one of the things that just adds to that at-home experience if you can get the channel where your team actually plays. So,
Elliott, are you expressing skepticism at the ability of Chicago Cubs fans to catch their home team on a television program?
Not at all.
You can always switch over to Pat Hughes.
Exactly. At least I'll be able to get that in, that visualization, even though I can't actually physically watch the game. So,
yep, absolutely.
Thanks, Marquis.
Marquis, are you guys able to watch that? That's my question, because this wasn't a planned topic for tonight. Just for a brief second, I know that they ran into like the perfect storm launching a network last year and then having a pandemic happen, right? And all the other renovations, all the other investments they've made around that stadium and that ballpark to have something like that happen last year. Obviously, you're seeing the outcome you're seeing the economic impact. Probably has a lot to do with what has happened and hasn't happened in this offseason, and the fact that we can have some fans back, and I think St. Louis can go up to 32%. I think I might be off by a point or two there.
No,
but
that's right.
32% they're allowing back into the ballpark. And I think knowing or anticipating that, Pete, might have been why the Cubs were able to actually just make a couple moves. Call them modest, call them whatever you want to. They at least did something after letting some guys walk, really.
Yep. You're absolutely right. And as far as being able to see it, right now, correct me if I'm wrong, Elliott, Marquis carried on Comcast, DirecTV, and AT&T, and I think that's it.
That is it.
Dish doesn't have any regional sports networks.
Nope. And it was carried by Hulu last year, the Hulu Live, if you subscribe to it, but apparently
there's nothing right now.
They tried to raise the rates on Hulu, and Hulu's like, you didn't garner enough viewership last year to raise your rates, so we will just no longer carry you. So anybody who is a cord cutter like myself, I know Ron feels the pain. You as well. We will have to jump through some hoops if we actually want to watch the games. So
my hope is that sooner rather than later that Major League Baseball is going to change its view on this and shift the paradigm and allow streaming entirely through in-app purchases. And not necessarily through the MLB network, but that you'll be able to buy a subscription to the Marquee app and you'll be able to watch content.
Absolutely. And I think at this point in this day and age, it makes sense for anybody, no matter where they live, to be able to... If you want to go to a game, you're going to go to a game. It's not going to... I mean, it's not going to stop people from watching games if they're watching not in market or in market. So I think it's one of the most ridiculous things. I don't believe NFL does that. You can still watch your home team, I believe, through the NFL app.
No,
man. NFL is frustrating.
Do they still black that
sellout rule?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't.
Games got to be sold out.
Yeah, I can't watch our Bears. Our Bears, I hope, get Russell Wilson just from just from a prestige value. If anything else. It's heating up. That's right. But no, I can't. I'm shut out with the Bears. If they're not playing a nationally televised game, if it's regional and they're playing in Chicago and not playing Carolina, or maybe the Falcons or the Steelers, we catch a lot of Steelers games out here too. I'm shut out. I mean, I have to have Sunday ticket or I can't watch it. But so, Cardinals fans are up in arms right now. It's the same reasons a lot of Midwest fans are right now, and that is a lot of these streaming services. A lot of people have cut cable over the last 4 or 5 years. I've been one of them.
And it's growing. As somebody who sells the products or works for a corporation that sells the products to people cord cutting, I mean, the cost of having a cable subscription is ridiculous. So more and more every day, people, the baby boomers are coming in. I can't afford my cable subscription anymore. Tell me how I can get this. And it's every single month it is a more and more percentage of people.
And I'm sure the industry knows that, right? But people like AT&T, or it is DirecTV now, it's the same company. They started their own streaming service, AT&T. Now it was DirecTV. Now at some point, when I first cut cable, that's what I went to. But my point was, a lot of people who have done this now, they find all these streaming services like YouTube TV, Hulu, AT&T. Now all of a sudden, these guys aren't carrying this Fox Sports regional sports, and you have to if you don't have a cable subscription or a satellite subscription, you're kind of screwed right now. And I'm lucky where I'm at because I happen to be out of the St. Louis market right now in MLB.TV. I have no problem getting most of the games except they're playing the Reds, which, that's still a head scratcher in my opinion. I won't go off on that here on Ruffled Feathers, or the Team Rivals podcast audience has heard me rail on that one too many times. It's really been unreasonable, my hatred to that. But I feel for them, and I see it every day out there on social media, people just frustrated as hell. So the something's going to have to snap here at some point in time, Elliott. They're going to have to, and Pete, I agree with you too, that at some point in time, it's going to be, I don't know if it'll go full blown a la carte, but it's really getting that way. When you look around and you see Peacock and you see Paramount Plus has one, everybody has a Plus app, and that's not going to be too surprised at some point in time where this regionality is going to maybe be a thing of the past. And if you want to watch your team, you buy it directly from your team. Yeah. And so
sorry to derail the beginning of the conversation, but
no, I think it's important. It has everything to do with that. You work in an industry where you talk to people every day that are making that switch, and you just wonder how long it's going to take sports and these big regional networks to catch on to that. I really don't know what they're going to do. This has to be stressful. Like if you're a Bally's executive or a Fox executive, and you just purchase all these regional networks, and you've got all this friction between services like Hulu and YouTube, and they're trying to charge them for it, and they just don't want to. Basically, what's going to happen is the cost of streaming at some point in time is going to get very, very close or catch up to the cost of what having a cable TV contract.
It already is, depending on what services that you want, because right now YouTube TV is $65 a month. Thankfully, they make it worth it with the content that they have on there, especially with having MLB Network, having the Red Zone channel on there, those extended cable channels without all the filler. They've really made it worth it.
But there has been, I agree, Elliott, but you know what? There's been a common denominator over the years in all this. Back even when I had a local cable, when I lived back in Illinois, I don't know if it was Comcast or what it was, but at some point in time, Fox Sports Networks had a friction with them, and they dropped the games for about a week. And there was a bunch of people bitching about it, and then they put them right back on. Now we go to streaming services. One by one, they're dropping Fox Sports. Guys, what's the common denominator here? Fox Sports and baseball. And it's baseball.
It's not because it's the way that the contracts are structured, right? And it's in both parties' interests to take it right up until the last possible moment, because then it creates the most leverage. And that's why you see it happen all the time. It's not necessarily because it's Fox, it's because it's a regional sports network. And so well, I mean, look at what happened with Marquee last year, right? They didn't sign a lot of the organizations, including Comcast, until the very last moment, because it was in those cable companies' interest to hold out as long as they possibly could.
Well, no doubt, but I guess as a sports fan, it's happened repeatedly with Fox Sports regional networks, right? So that was my
because
point.
They're the only regional sports network.
Yeah, because you haven't seen it happen with ESPN, at least as far as I know. I don't know that that's occurred.
Right.
Maybe it
Although
has.
ESPN is the biggest culprit for the rising cable bills, because they get more per subscriber than any other content network on cable.
That is correct.
They get something like, I think it's $5 per subscriber, which is way more than anybody else gets.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. They more than Hallmark.
When you're complaining about your cable bills, it's because of ESPN.
and many like them. I agree. So yes, this is not a streaming / cable TV episode here, but it is relevant to Cardinals fans because a lot of them are feeling it right now, and it does suck. It does suck not knowing how you're going to be able to listen to games. And one thing I do want to mention here is I was actually listening to the radio side of this because I was just in my car and it was the middle of one of the games, and I flipped over to the Cardinals radio broadcast. I believe it was opening day. It was on Sunday, and I heard Mike Shannon, who's in his final year. He's retiring after 50 plus seasons with the organization. Most of them as a broadcaster, and I got to say that hearing him on the radio, while comforting at first, I don't know if it was the travel, I don't know if he's ill, but it's just something about him. He sounded really off, not normally like he did. Maybe a little tired on Sunday. So I know a lot of Cardinals fans were talking about this on social media, slightly worried about just kind of what condition he's in. I haven't heard him the last couple of days, but it was a little bit worrisome. That's not the same Mike we're used to listening to, and he's up there in years and. He's at the end of his career here, so I'd like to see him finish strong. And you guys haven't heard him much, but he's just like you guys had Ron Santo and he was. They're different, but yet the same. Both of them were former third basemen. They're great personalities. They have just stories to tell like you wouldn't believe. Quirky personalities, not your typical polished radio guy.
Absolutely not.
But you know what? Those guys are terrific. It's fantastic having those guys in the booth, and I'm really going to miss him when he's gone. But yeah, a lot of Cardinals fans were a little worried on Sunday, just how he sounded on the radio. But maybe he's recovered. Maybe he bounced back. Maybe the jet lag gets you a little bit more when you're over 80 years old than it does when you're in your 40s. I hope.
If he's broadcasting from the ballparks, I assume that he, like many other broadcasters last year, was broadcasting from home, right?
No, he was in Florida.
Was he?
Yeah.
No. But I mean, throughout the season.
Well, throughout the season, they were doing it from the home ballpark. So watching on monitors.
Shannon, I think I don't know what year he switched over, but as many of these guys do, and at the end of their careers, a lot of them don't do road games anymore. Right, they only do home, and that's what he was doing. And I don't recall last year if he did road games or not. I'd have to go back and listen to some of those, but I don't know if he did that since they were all from St. Louis. So,
and I would imagine he's a little bit like what we're going to see from a lot of pitchers this year. He's out of practice, right? He only called 60 plus games.
Yeah,
and he did them
and maybe half of those
from his home area. Now all of a sudden he's flying down to Florida and, he's having to ramp back up and get ready. Maybe he's like that veteran pitcher who's just going out there and just getting his work in spring training, and
or maybe he's like that, or maybe he's like that young pitcher in Jack Flaherty who didn't get off to a great start. The Cardinals have had 3 out of the 4 games so far starting pitchers haven't looked good. Carlos Martinez looked terrible today. I mean, I think he gave up 6 earned runs, 6 runs all earned in 1 2/3 innings. If I remember the box score correctly.
Maybe he was just working on some pitches and he was just working on his location, because I tell you what, that is usually the number one thing they say in that day. Is like, I had some good pitches, I had some bad pitches, but I was just really working on my location today.
Well, and Elliott, if you would tell me if something like this happened with Max Scherzer and he was just experimenting with another grip, hell or high water, he was going to experiment with that grip for a whole inning. Don't care what the outcome is. I would buy that. Carlos is trying to get back into the rotation. right? He's trying to be a starter again. So I see this one a little bit different. This one troubles me a bit more. Look, I'm pulling for him because if that guy can return 80% to form, I'll take him at 4 or 5 in the rotation.
Did he have the right color hair?
No, maybe not. I haven't seen what his hair color is yet. But, it is troublesome. Kim, who pitched a day or two ago, didn't look that great either. So there's some worry from Cardinals fans, a little bit on the pitching staff. And now how I feel about this, I kind of agree with your sentiment in the beginning there, Elliott, is a lot of these guys are working on something. Yeah. Whether it's a change of speed, grip, it's the first look. It's just 4 games into spring training. I usually don't.
These are the ones that we shouldn't care about very much at all.
No,
I feel.
But you got people waiting there on the edge of their seats, ready for baseball to come back, and we're going to overanalyze stuff.
It's the last week where it's their last tune-ups that. If these guys are still struggling on something or they're still getting shelled, then that's when there's maybe a little bit to start worrying about, I feel like.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest anxiety so far. Just a few games in from Cardinals fans. It's just the condition of the pitching because we had some questions going into this year about, hey, what was this going to look like? Because we had Wainwright coming back at age 40, Carlos maybe getting another shot at the rotation. Jack Flaherty didn't have a great 2020. Miles Michaelis missed he missed all of 2020, so we didn't really know what kind of condition he hasn't thrown yet.
He's been pushed back, hasn't he?
Right, which is always, I love it when they say it's precautionary because it takes me back to Lovie Smith every time. As soon as somebody
the last thing you want to see is somebody who hasn't pitched in a year get pushed back, right? Because at this point, he should be healthy. He should be good to go. Yeah,
it is.
Hey, you got one good year out of him.
We did get a good year. We got good 1 year plus out of him, I think. But so the biggest anxiety Cardinals fans have right now, besides Matt Carpenter getting a start at second base, his lies in the pitching staff because we had questions going into this year. Me personally, look, I cannot make a judgment one way or the other. Whether you're a hitter, pitcher, whether you're a hot dog vendor, I don't know what the hell to think of you 4 games into spring training.
Is there some worry? Is there some worry about the Matt Carpenter starting at second base already?
There is. There's some anxiety there. It's unwarranted at this point. Look, the reality is this: he needs a certain amount of at bats this year. I don't know exactly what the number is, 550, maybe a little bit more north of that, in order to get his contract renewed, picked up for 2022. I can tell you right now, at $18 million, there's no way he's getting that many plate appearances. So if some reason you're just anti-hate Matt Carpenter fan out there, and I'm not one of them, I don't believe he's a starter anymore, but if you hate Matt Carpenter, you're on edge right now, just wondering, oh my God, they're going to play the contract, they're going to play the money. Well, let me remind you, they just shipped money out to L.A., to the Angels and Dexter Fowler, and they paid a majority of what he was owed. So I don't think it's just play the contract. I don't think that's a thing, especially in his last year. So
why would that be? That makes absolutely no sense from a business perspective, right? If you have a contract that you want to get out from under, why in God's name would you bend heaven and earth in order to make that contract extend for another year?
Right.
Like if anything, you would bury him on the bench.
Yeah.
All the Matt Carpenter haters should not be worried in the least.
But I think those that are most violent, I don't seriously mean violent, but for those that are most vocal, let's put it that way, they're just worried that he's going to get 150 at bats. They don't want to see him hitting at all.
That might be a stretch now that we know that the DH isn't coming this year in the NL.
Right. That would have been the only way he would have got. Yeah, that would have been the only way he got close
Matt
to
Carpenter.
No, there really isn't. No, there really isn't. And you know what? But if he can hit at all, that's not a bad bat to have off the bench, right, from the left side. If he can hit it all, if he can regain any type of form whatsoever in his last year, fine. They're probably better off for it. I don't have high hopes for any of that because his downward trend, I don't even call it a trend. I mean, he's fallen off a cliff since late 2018. He really has.
He fell harder than GameStop.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So, all right. So for the Cardinals side of this whole podcast here, what have you guys seen from the Cactus League, though? And again, we know it's only 4 games, but is there anything notable?
Well, the Cubs signed Eric Sogard the other day, so that gives him a little bit more depth at second base. And selfishly, what I hope that means is that some combination of Sogard, Bodie, and Vargas are going to end up taking second base so that Nico Horner can get some more work in AAA, because the bat's just not there yet. And, you know, Major League Baseball is not the place to work out the flaws in your swing and to work on your weaknesses. If you don't show up polished and ready to go, you're going to get eaten alive. And we've seen that in Nico's first 2 seasons. So I think the best thing for him and for the Cubs long-term is for him to go down to AAA, but who knows? We'll see what happens. I think second base and then whoever ends up in the bullpen are the big questions for the Cubs. They got a bunch of names trying to get those 9 or 10 spots. We'll see what happens.
How can you say that with Nico's obscene 833 batting average right now, Pete?
How many games have they played?
Exactly. No, I think they left him in. They've left him in for most of the games to get him a lot of at bats, and I think that's an indication of him starting the season down in AAA. So just getting him that experience. We all know the glove's there. I mean, he plays some great defense. It's the bat that needs to mature. I feel like it's getting there, but I would be more comfortable with him starting the season, seasoning. So I am totally okay with it because I don't feel like this team is ready to compete at the high level, even though most of that core is still there. But I know we'll probably talk about this later, but